welcome back to Whisky Wednesday. I'm Joe Ellis, and every Wednesday I do another whisky review. So it's time for the Cutty Sark 18. Let's pour it out. Cutty Sark, of course, is a blended whisky, 18 years old, and the age on a whisky always relates to the youngest whisky in the blend. Along with single malt, so if you see a 12-year-old single malt, it's always the youngest whisky in there. There could be a proportion of slightly older stock, but they legally have to put youngest whisky on the bottle. So it's the 18-year-old Cutty Sark. It's available usually for around about £65. It's quite hard to find, but good specialist shops should have it, and especially overseas as well. It's a really big seller overseas. Well, outside of the UK, obviously. I'm in the UK, so it's available quite a lot outside of the UK. Nice dark colour, as you'd expect really, from a whisky of this age, and because Cutty Sark uses a lot of old Macallan, old Highland Park and old Glenrothes, it should have some kind of more heavily sherried stock. So let's give it a nose. Blended Scotch whiskies, of course, are a mixture of lots of different single malt whiskies and, of course, grain whisky. And grain whisky is made from wheat and is made in a continuous still rather than a pot still. So on the nose, I'm getting coffee notes, sweet coffee. It's definitely heavier than the previous Cutty Sark whiskies I reviewed in the last 2 weeks. So you can tell there's been a lot more sherry cask influence for this one. That trademark Cutty Sark vanilla note comes through again. There's a slight datiness. Spicy dried fruits. Kind of fruity, and that kind of Highland Park honey element comes through as well. It's generally a really kind of rich, fruity, soft, honeyed nose, and that kind of coffee and vanilla. Alright, let's give it a taste. Now on the palate, it's actually quite spicy. Very, very smooth as well. A lot of depth to it actually as well. You can tell it's an older whiskey. If you had this and the 12 side by side, you can tell this is definitely a deeper flavour. It's richer, getting that honey coming through again. A little bit more of the dried fruit. It kind of replicates what the nose does on the palate. So it's very similar on the nose to the palate, is what I'm trying to say. Let's give it another taste to get some flavours again. Now, with the second taste, I pick up more of the kind of old grain notes coming through. So maybe kind of muscovado sugar, that kind of sweetness, slightly rum-like. And with older grain whiskies, they can develop into a nice kind of rum-like taste. So it's that kind of sweetness, sweet sugar, muscovado sugar notes. Again, the honey. Think kind of slightly burnt honey. If you were to kind of cook honey in a pan and slightly burn it, that's what I can imagine. Let's give it a third and final taste. Now, For the third taste, there's lots more caramel flavours coming through, a lot more richness, some of that more kind of maltiness, kind of maybe slightly kind of malt loaf, so it's a kind of dried, heavier style. And the finish, it brings it up again. It's slightly floral, and also it's kind of dry actually. Almost think kind of like slightly kind of pepperminty, that kind of slightly dried note. The finish is, for an 18-year-old whiskey, it's kind of medium length. You can still taste it now. Ideally, I mean, it's bottled at 43%, so it's stronger than a standard blend, which is quite nice. I might like to try it at about 46 and non-chilled filtered. But a solid whiskey for about £65. Certainly would not complain if someone was to buy me a bottle of that. 8 out of 10. I think it's better than 12, in my opinion. And all the Cutty Sark whiskies actually, you know, really, really good value. But 8 out of 10 for the kind of depth and complexity of the flavours, and for them bottling at 43%. Just gives it that slight bit of bite, that slight bit of spiciness on the finish. So yeah, Cutty Sark 18. If you've tried it, let me know what you think, leave me a comment, and I will see you next week, guys. Cheers, bye-bye.